mind of the country in general. So
So
that would not fit the definition.
We're
I
talking about enforcement also as well too. So
Yeah, okay. I want to talk about what that enforcement looks like, but I think it's kind of funny though that like you let off by being like, well, since Eucharist wants to pull this, well, what's Christian nationalism card? I guess I'll have to define it. Like that isn't the debate, right? So we need to know what Christian nationalism is if you're going to argue it's creating this cultural cohesion. That was just kind of a weird way to open. I would like to know your definitions. I'm trying to make sure I'm not knocking down straw men, but I was curious about something in your intro, Marte. You seem to assume that the only alternatives to Christian nationalism are either secularism or libertarianism, and I'm curious why you think that, because when I look at the history of Christians wrestling with political thought from Jesus onward, I see a pretty rich tapestry of a variety of opinions on this issue, from some people suggesting Christians shouldn't be involved in politics at all, others suggesting we need some sort of actual theocracy, some union between church and state, others suggesting something more like Christendom, where you have the emperor being disciplined by the church, etc. Like so I just don't know why you would say, well, Christian nationalism is the only option unless you want secularism or libertarianism. I didn't hear either.
Did I ever say only option? That never once
you seem to present those as the choices. You're like, well, secularism and libertarianism have nothing to say against that. Okay, well, you seem to assume that that's the only thing that we can.
You're actually making the assumption, because I've never said that. That's never left my mouth. What I've done was I've given you a few options. Now, if I went ahead and sputtered atheists, agnostics, I'd be here like for an hour, right? But to cut everything short, I give a few examples, right? In order for us to continue on with this conversation, I can't have a whole diatribe of like a litany of examples, which I can. There's many. But I never presented this dilemma of like, oh, there's only this and that. What I'm doing is I'm opening the floor to give you some examples to give way for this conversation by telling you that this is optimal. That's all I'm saying. That's all I've said. And I was very concise when I said this.
Asserting it, you need to prove it.
Correct. This is optimal. And I've asked the question, and I've actually posited this. Can you tell us why Christians shouldn't rule and use force? And we can get into this the same time. As a politician, right? There's no way you can separate religion from state anyways. Anytime you have a politician who says, I believe in God and all my ethics come from God, you are to rule based on how is he wrong? How is that separating church from state anyways? And he is using the enforcement arm of law enforcement, military power to do this and everything else underneath this Christian ethical system.
Well, sure. So,
no, go ahead. Sorry.
I would just say, I think your definition is overly broad, and I think this is why this debate is happening. I think this is why Christian nationalism is such a hot, contentious topic, because you say Christian nationalism is a governance by Christian values in a nation. That could take a lot of different forms. So let me just give you one example, right? So I think you could imagine, right, somebody having an idea that we need to top down create some sort of propaganda that convinces everybody that we're right and those secular libs over there are wrong and our way's better and healthier and everything. And that might be true, actually, all the things that the propaganda is saying, but it is a kind of propaganda. And then we need to gain some power, even possibly if we're not in the 51% majority or more, and enforce our values if we have the politicking opportunity. You could also alternatively have somebody who is a Christian, who is elected to office or appointed to some high station in a non-liberal democracy, who says, how can I, as a just ruler, carry out Christian values in my work, which is a much less social engineering kind of question, right? I hope you can see why these two things are different and why Christian nationalism comes off to people as this sort of like social engineering kind of project rather than a call for simple Christian faithfulness wherever you find yourself in power or influence.
But
right?
do you?
Even if it was social engineering, though, what's wrong with that? Like, we've already got social engineering. I mean, the liberals have been social engineering things for like what, a few years, I don't even know how long, but they've been social engineering things. So if they're okay with that, if they're okay with social engineering society, well, then why would they have a problem with the Christian nationality? Like, they can't say, well, it's a problem because it's social engineering.
You think that the same kind of social engineering and propaganda hasn't come from not just secularists, but anti-Christian organizations?
Yeah, sure. Exactly.
So, I mean, this is a pushback to that.
Yeah.
I think that if there's going to be those kind of social engineerings, there's going to be those kind of propagandas, we should do it with the moral ethic that actually has a prescriptive value. So that's why I want to ask you, Eucharist, as a Christian, when we talk about nationalism, at least in the way that I'm looking at it and I'm defining it, we're looking at the dichotomy between what is patriotism, what is nationalism. Generally, what I found is that with the definition of nationalism, it's not just pride in the country, but a superiority. within the country, right? So when we put Christian in front of that, we're saying that Christianity is the superior moral ethic. And I would like to ask you, as a Christian, what ethical system do you find to be superior to the Christian one?
I wouldn't
Wait, Eucharist is Eucharist a Christian?
say there is any ethical system
Okay.
superior to the Christian one because I'm a Christian, but
So then, what's the issue then? Why is he on the side with Wick?
the
Sure.
nationalism part is sort of what I'm grappling with, right? So one, the superiority question I think is really interesting, but sort of what are the bounds of a nation and what constitutes it? Who's in, who's out? These are sort of fundamental political questions that nationalists grapple with quite extensively. I don't always hear Christian nationalists grapple with as well. So
Well,
Right.
we're really bearing kind of like the major question that I think that gives the lie to Christian nationalism. Which type of Christian are you? Right? Remember that scene in the movie Civil War where the guy like, what type of American are you? Right?
Yeah.
Next to the pit of bodies. I think that's going to be the question of the day. Which type of Christian counts as a Christian nationalist nation? Do Mormons count? Are they Christian in your worldview?
Wick, I
Right?
want to
Do
say, I
Catholics
think,
count? Can I just finish?
Mormons.
no,
Right?
yeah, sorry.
The Catholics count as Christians in your worldview? How about a
Yes.
Protestant? Do they count as Christians in your worldview? Right? And so this question of which type of Christian are you is going to see the destruction of any moral kind of cohesion you think that you can bring or any kind of cultural cohesion.
I mean, I don't think so. Listen, obviously, Orthodox, Protestant, Catholicism, yeah, they're different, but we all kind of overall have the same values. We all overall have the same values. Listen, I'm still not an expert in this stuff, but we still have the same core values. If you get an Orthodox, a Protestant, and a Catholic together, there's going to be some things they disagree about, but overall, like if you get to the main, like the most important things, they're going to agree on those important things.
That you think you can bring. Now I'm done.
Well,
So-
yeah, I disagree with that fundamentally. Your whole opening was incredibly easy to debunk because
Then do it.
there's some whoa, you got on me for interrupting and then did it about 3 seconds in. Hold your horses. Anyway, we've got Protestants, we've got Catholics, we've got Orthodox, but we have a unifying factor, and it's the Nicene Creed, and we agree on a policy level.
When
way
was the
more
Yeah.
than
Nicene
we would
Creed
ever.
formed?
When was the Nicene Creed formed? At least in our church, we have it within the first 7 ecumenical councils. So yeah, there's different
So what
variations of the
date is I'm
Nicene
asking?
Creed. I
Ish.
don't have it off my head, but it's
300
not relevant to this debate.
AD-ish?
It's not relevant
Well,
to
it
this
is
debate. And
relevant
no,
because
you know what?
if
Hey,
you were saying that
don't get
you're-
onto me for
hold on.
interrupting and then interrupt whenever you say
Ooh.
refute it, and then I get 5 seconds in and you interrupt me. So how about we don't do
wrong?
that?
Is it the
No.
300,
You're not going to tell me why I'm
300
wrong when I haven't
AD?
finished my sentence, buddy. How about
Gentlemen,
cool it?
figure
No.
it out.
Come on, that's outrageous. That's outrageous to bitch about interrupting and then do it 3 seconds in. We agree on a policy level way more than we disagree when it comes to things like abortion.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, we do. Gay marriage,
Yeah.
the nuclear family,
Yeah.
all of these things that drive an actual cohesion. Even the Mormons, if they want to hop on the bandwagon for Christian ethics, if they want to stand by all those things that are actually going to push away from degeneracy, go ahead. They can hop on, but it's going to be a Christian moral standard that comes on top at the end of the day. There's way more Protestants that are sympathetic to the Orthodox position or even to the Catholic position when it comes on to getting buses and going to pro-life marches, okay? So, this is something that I think is a non-issue. I don't think that
Yeah.
Christian nationalism is going to be debating over praying to saints. I think it's going to be making sure that we don't see homosexual sex acts in the streets during pride parades. It's going to be not seeing marriage redefined as a polyamorous homosexual entity, but something that is within the church. These are all things we can get behind. So this idea that because there's different beliefs that we don't have a shared moral ethic is ridiculous.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like I was saying, with the big important things we all agree on.
Shared moral ethic that the people in after the Nicene Creed, I would remind you, ended up killing each other for hundreds of years. So this
Okay.
idea that yours
And?
is somehow going to be special, right?
How does that apply
You
in
just haven't
modernity?
tried it correctly yet, I guess. Like you're very communist in this, right? Like the
How does that
communist
apply in
belief,
modernity?
We just haven't done communist correctly ever. Will lead to peace,
So
prosperity.
let me just
You don't
ask you
have a
this.
single, Christian nationalist nation that doesn't descend into internecine warfare and or in some cases just becomes more liberal over time.
Wick, we have more examples of secularism
one.
destroying society more than Christian society. Look at Mao, look at Genghis Khan. We have tons of bodies that hit the floor, not to reference music here, but I'm just telling you right now, I mean, right now, it just sounds like you guys are backed up into a corner right now because it sounds threatening to you. And I understand because you want the right to cum, right? Your right to cum shall not be infringed, Wick. You know, who am I to infringe on that, right? But in comes the Christians taking away this right for you to cum and say, oh, John wants to go ahead and suck dick at night and then cum to pornography and then act like a saint on Raging Tomato right now, whenever, right? But I'm just telling you right now that we need something across the board. And what's cohesive right now is Christianity, because right now my partner, Eli, has demonstrated that it's not cohesive at all.
Shout out to Drowning Pool, by the way. Let the bodies hit the floor.
I get upset.
And Wick, I just want to bring this up. So you're saying that if by our definition of Christian nationalism, which is the Christian ethic having a dominance in the social and political life of the country, that you're saying that will cause Protestants and Orthodox to kill each other in the streets over icons praying to saints? You said mass deaths. You said it will cause, what did you say?
Christian nationalism, right? If your definition of Christian nationalism is simply that you want to elect Christian leaders and you want to promote Christian ideology, that can take place in a liberal worldview. That does not require a change to our system in any way, shape, or form. All you have to do is convince people to vote your way, and you can have it happen.
Okay.
That's the strength of liberalism, right? But also, right, what you sneak in.
That's the strength of liberalism. If it's so weak that any ideology could just come in and just take it over, that's not a strength of liberalism. I would say it's a weakness.
And what I think Marte mentioned in his opening, and he's referred to several times, and I think we should get to this now, is the enforcement mechanism. And that enforcement mechanism, right, that is what is going to be the driving, dividing wedge issue, because one group of Christians will seek to enforce their will over another group of Christians, and it will lead.
It sounds like he's just using our arguments that we use for like secular humanists or atheists. It sounds like he's trying to use that argument, but it doesn't work because, okay, if all of the Christians agree abortion bad, and we want to use the force if we want to use force to ban abortion, what Christians are going to disagree with that? What Christians are out there that are going to be like, yeah, no. And there's going to be a battle between the Christians on whether or not we should keep abortion. Like, no, overwhelmingly, Christians agree that abortion bad. So I think he's trying to use our arguments against liberalism because they have no standards. It is pretty much just whatever way the wind blows, but that's not going to work.
To bloodshed, because religious wars, let me tell you, are far more of a bloody struggle than anything else.
I want to hang on. I just have to
First of all, I want to. Oh, sorry. I want to correct a couple things that he just said. So first of all,
there's a lot of things I want to correct that y'all have just said. So
okay, well you can. He directed that towards me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Eli, and then we'll kick it right back to you, Chris. How's that?
Gotcha. So again, his definition was electing more Christians and something else. Neither one of those things included dominance in the social, cultural life, and dominance in the. It's not just electing them. I know we can still do that, but it's a more of a domineering presence where the collective identity leans on a Christian ethic. So now here's the second part. Is you said we don't have to change the system. We're not advocating for changing our democratic system. Yes, it would be through the conventions that we have, through the electorate, through democracy, but this would be a more totality of a pushing of the ethic, not something that, well, when you say we already have that, but then you look and you see what is actually having the cultural and social dominance of today. What's America really known for? We're known for Trump, wet ass pussy, a lot of really nice rap culture. That's not what I want America to be known for, okay? I want it to be known for something deeper and more righteous than that. And yeah, we're going to use democracy just fine, but you still strawmanned and totally misdefined exactly what we've said in those definitions. But let's go to you, Chris, to see what he had to say.
Or did Marte say, or did he not say that there would be enforcement?
Do we enforce laws?
Okay. Do you think that he means enforcement in the same way that we enforce laws? And
Yes.
what laws would you have that would enforce Christian ethics?
Well, so for example, I think on a personal level that the state should be. It's also can be what things we don't enforce, right? Because this is a really big dichotomy about the misappropriated idea that Christians are going to impose their will through law, when what actually
Bro, you're talking
happens
about
is
enforcing Christian
yes,
dominance
yes, no,
through
I'm
law.
talking about politicians informing their decisions based on their Christian ethic, which
You can't have
they're
it both ways, brother. You
What do you
can't
mean?
say that we're not going to enforce it. Like, you just complained that people are saying, well, they're complaining of us enforcing our Christian ethics, but your
No,
whole
you didn't
point
let. Well,
of
you
your
didn't let me
whole
finish.
argument is that you're going to enforce Christian dominance through law, right? And
Yeah.
through whatever other enforcement mechanisms that Marte was alluding to, which he still hasn't gotten to. But I will pass the mic to my friend Eucharist, because I feel like I'm interrupting him and I don't want
Thank
to.
you,
I'm
Wick.
sorry.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just I don't know why Marte brings up Cooming as if I maybe somebody can wind back the tape and correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think either of us so far has even appealed to like rights and liberties.
Cooming.
Like that has not been part of the conversation at all, right? We're attacking your positive claim. We're suggesting that you think this is going to bring about this great cohesion. We think there are cracks in that argument. Neither of us is sitting here defending our right to Coom, so I'm not sure why you're just throwing that out there. Maybe you'll say, "Oh, you weren't really saying that. It was just an example again," but you seem to be imputing things to us that we're not arguing. This again broad category of governance by Christian values in a nation. I think that where Wick and I are getting hung up, right, is it seems like, well, at least Marte, Eli didn't bring this up specifically, but arguments around this will often bring up, especially in the American context, that we did have established churches in the states even after the ratification of the Constitution. Great, very interesting. 2 points on that. Wick is suggesting that what you all are proposing will eventually lead to conflict. I question why you bring up established churches within the states if you aren't supporting that. If you are supporting an established church, that would seem to require at least each state, or maybe the whole nation, because we're talking about nationalism, to determine which churches count, which get public support, and which don't. So that will introduce theological questions, and so that will introduce theological conflict in the political arena. So we're suggesting that might bring about some kind of conflict. And then the question Wick was really honing in on that I think is most important, right? Eli, I think you hammered this really well right at the end of your introduction, right? You said what we're talking about is Christian dominance in culture, not through force, right? You've disavowed the idea that we're going to convert at the point of the sword. Great, awesome, we're on the same page. But you say this might happen through conversion or at least acceptance of the ethic, even if they're not Christians. Awesome. But then what is the question that we're hammering home? So when you talk about enforcement, when you talk about the laws we will have, when you talk about working within our institutional structure, what does it look like afterwards? So real quick example, and maybe you can respond to this. You don't have to. Daddy Andrew likes to bring up the 19th Amendment, right? So if you've got enough cultural Christian force on your guys' side that said women shouldn't vote, we need household vote, we abolish the 19th Amendment, would you support any sort of institutional reforms that would make it more difficult to reinstate the 19th Amendment should the Democratic win shift the other direction? Like, what sorts of institutional changes are you looking at once you achieve that dominance and that enforcement? That, I think, is what concerns us, yeah?
Yeah,
Eucharist, I want to address this real quick because you pointed out that I was just making some claims and saying, oh, you know, Coom for no reason. The reason why I'm pointing this out is because the whole topic is cohesion. Right now, kids right now can point and then click, I'm 18 and log into certain sites, even though they're not 18. Do we have a cohesion on this? No, it doesn't even exist. People hold on to traditions in American, right? In America values, we have traditions that have been passed down. These traditions are being torn down. Look at Dawkins' lament. Right now, we have immigrants coming into our nation, twisting the narrative, twisting traditions that we have, warping everything else. Do you think it's going to be the same America if we keep allowing this? Right. So now our traditions are getting warped and warped and warped. We're secularists are doing a really great job. That's what I'm pointing to. We have corn everywhere, parades with sex acts on the streets. This is considered progress. We have a feces finder in LA right now. That's ridiculous. So people are sacrificing everything for more butt sex, but not more duty. That's the last thing that people want is more duty. You're not fighting for this. And
well, okay, we do have more duty, but not the kind of duty Marte's talking about. He's talking about DUTY. We have plenty of the other kind of duty, if you know what I mean.
That's what I'm pointing to, because you haven't yet, even though my partner Eli and I have begged this and asked and pleaded for what's more optimal. You've yet to get this, and you've danced around this whole topic.
I conceded right at the beginning. Yes, what's more optimal than Christian ethics? I agree Christian ethics are optimal. The question is how.
All right, then debate lost on their part. But no, absolutely, that's the thing. That reason why it's superior to liberalism is because, as even Wick said earlier, liberalism, you know, he said it, he didn't say it directly, he said it in his own way, that liberalism will allow other ideologies to come in and take over. there is no cohesive cohesive worldview under liberalism. Okay, with Christianity, there's a cohesive worldview, or even though between the different sects of Christianity, the different beliefs of Christianity, even though there's some disagreements there, overall we have a better cohesion. We agree on the big topics, but liberalism, they don't. They all believe in different things, and there's no cohesion there. It's just whatever the group is feeling at the time, whatever we feel is best at the time. Well, that's what we're going to go with.
We go about actually living those out and enforcing those on a political prudential level. It's not a question for me, at least. It might be with Wick.
Actually
hold on. So no, hang on. You're attacking people who aren't here right now, right? So I support age verification laws. I don't think that's Christian nationalism, right? So would you agree first, real quickly, and then I want Eli to, or both of you.
You want cohesion of Christian ethics?
Hold on. Okay, good, so would you agree the state right now in America, right, is a kind of pluralism, right? We have pluralism. Anybody can believe what they want. They can vote however they want, right? That's where we are, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so where I think Wick and I are finding friction here is what you're suggesting is a move from the status quo to something quite different that you assume is going to increase cultural cohesion. What we're suggesting is that whenever you get some sort of broad movement in a sort of, let's call it politically radical direction, because what you guys want is very different from what the majority of Americans want, at least right now, that is going to create some conflict, right? So we're at least moving from pluralism to a different situation that is going to create kinds of conflict. Now, you are arguing that down the road, it's going to lead to cultural cohesion. Great, we can hash that out. But I think you're missing that point, right? We're not saying that America now is perfectly cohesive and we need to preserve everything about it. You're just making that up.
Well,
yeah, completely false. But it's okay. Like, think of it this way: like Christmas, right? Christmas is a Christian holiday, and it's a national holiday, right? That we all celebrate. There's even jobs that are closed on Christmas. It's a national holiday that we as a nation celebrate. Does everybody in the country celebrate Christmas? No. Have we ever forced everybody to celebrate Christmas? No. But it's a national holiday that overall the people in the country celebrate because this is a Christian nation. So think of it that way. Like, just because we're going to have some things here, like, we're not going to force people to go to church. We're not going to do that. We're not, if they're Jewish or something, we're not going to force them to convert to Christianity. We're just going to apply the Christian ethics. Like, think of it like that.
And this is the problem is, I mean, does cultural and moral cohesion mean zero conflict? Is that even possible? Is that even possible to have a nation with zero conflict? Can we have moral and cultural cohesion? And yeah, there still be pockets of conflict in the country. That's human nature. But when we talk about cohesion, we talk about something that is fixed, rigid, and unmoving that we generally, as a collective, fall back on. I don't believe in a fake kumbaya. 100% of everybody is in a blissful state of agreement. I think that's foolish. But what we're talking about is, instead of as you talked about with the 19th Amendment, I want to address that specifically. So let's say that we have what we're talking about, a social and political dominance. And then that dominance is so strong that it's not affected by the winds of change, as you talked about. That yes, in our pluralism, anybody can go either way, but the cohesion has become so strong through the movement that in the next 100, 200 years, such a thing would be unfathomable to go back on. So let's say we repeal the 19th Amendment, and yes, we put measures in place in order to not have it come back. But this is something that's voted on, something that's agreed on. Now.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
God
That's
struck
such a good
him down.
freeze
That's
mode
okay. I can
too.
do 1v2. I mean,
Nice.
Yeah, he'll
God
come back.
struck
We'll
him
give him just
Do
a
it, Marte.
second.
Cook.
Yeah, once he
his-
gets back. But to fill the time, right? Again.
Oh, wait, hold on. He's back. Wait,
Oh,
wait.
Oh, there he is.
Down on
Sorry.
your laurels.
Sorry
Eli,
about
go
that.
ahead.
You
Well,
left
yeah,
off
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right. So, can someone remind me what the last thing they heard was?
You said that you might, with that overwhelming majority, put in measures to make it harder to make that change in the future.
Right, but what we're doing is we are falling back on a rigid ethic. We think that the kind of cultural zeitgeist mentality that, hey, we can the winds can change in whatever direction is the problematic part of the lack of moral cohesion we have in the country. That there is so many differing opinions, morality is subjective, but whenever as a culture, whether you're a rigid believer in the Sky Daddy or not, you say, hey, our culture is kind of generally leaned toward this culture's ethic, and it works, and it has worked, so we're going to keep doing that.
Again, no two different denominations of Christians share a culture. When you say you have this fixed, rigid moral framework. As soon as you try to decide and hammer down the specifics of what that is, your system will break down.
Okay.
Because
Well,
that's completely false.
Yeah.
No, I know you.
Yeah,
think-
Wick's just saying that, but like again, then he's trying to use our argument against atheism or liberalism, secular humanism, whatever you want to call it. He's trying to use that against us, but no, like Christians are overwhelmingly in agreement, like abortion bad. We're overwhelmingly in agreement that marriage is between a man and a woman. We're all overwhelmingly in agreement that we should not have gay pride parades. Like we're all overwhelmingly in agreement with that. So no, like Wick is trying to push this point home, but it's just not gonna work.
Completely.
I know you think that if Protestants and Catholics get on a pro-life bus, that they're just going to start stabbing each other.
They
but
killed each other for
Exactly.
hundreds of years, brother.
I know,
wait,
not in
hold on. I brought up
modernity.
Mao. I brought in Kong and everybody else that's created
am
more
not
wars, more
saying
violence, more
that
bloodshed.
secularism
Bodies hitting the
does
floor.
not have
Remember, I brought this
conflict,
up, but you negate
but you
all
are
this.
arguing that your Christian cultural cohesion will be better, and you have yet to demonstrate that. I keep asking, and you keep refusing.
Okay, so
to
let's go
provide
over what we
evidence.
agree on. Let's go over what we agree on. Do we overwhelmingly agree on the triune God? Let's say between Protestants. We're not talking about more.
Protestants, Catholics, yes.
You're talking about
Protestants, Catholics, and
Christians, right?
Orthodox. Yeah. Do we overwhelmingly agree on the triune God?
Not really.
Okay, so you don't know what you're
Okay.
talking about. You're irrelevant.
We all overwhelmingly believe that Jesus existed. As
That's right.
Christians.
Protestants and Catholics don't overwhelmingly agree in the
Should-
triune God.
Should you
Clip
be
it.
praying to saints? Which day do you celebrate the
How does
Sabbath?
that affect legislation or
Yeah.
I
social
don't think
cohesion?
that
For that
Exactly.
matter?
Again, you look at these specific.
Do Protestants want to
Question.
kill me for praying to
of
saints?
what-
There
are
hey,
plenty of
I don't know if
people
you
who
know about
would
this
not-
guy called Cromwell, but
Where's
I
that?
don't
Hey,
care
wait,
about
wait, hold
I
on.
care about
Can
en
you give me a
masse.
demonstration of Protestants who want to kill him for praying to saints? Me and Eli will wait.
no, hang on. I
Give me
think
a-
we're
hold on,
Can you
wait.
point to any
Give me
crimes
a
in the
dem-
country
give
where
us a
this has happened?
demonstration, Wick. Give us a demonstration, Wick. I'll wait.
Are you wanting me to demonstrate where a Protestant might want to kill a Catholic over religious differences? I can give you the history of Europe
No,
in
give
the
us
Reformation.
Great, give us a demonstration right now.
Okay. I will
Are we worried
read it to
about
you.
slavery rearing
The
its head
Peasant
again
War in
because
Germany.
of
The 30 Years' War in Central Europe, okay? The Wars of Capel, the French Wars of Religion. Again, millions have died.
let me see if I can
Okay.
let me see if I can clear part of this roadblock
Wick,
here, right?
Christian
Because-
ethics ended slavery in Britain. What are you
Go
talking
ahead,
about, Wick?
Go
This is
ahead,
crazy.
Eucharist.
let me
Go
see if I
ahead,
can clear part of
Eucharist.
this roadblock, right? I think Wick and I and some critics of Christian nationalism are concerned that at least some of you all, maybe you all will
Hashtag
disavow this, right? But
concerned.
at least some of the people I see defending the term on the internet, right, are interested in using the tools of liberal democracy to achieve this kind of cultural dominance you're talking about, then using that overwhelming majority to change some of those institutional things to entrench that permanent view, which takes us back to a more Christendom-like state, which was the state in which we had these wars of conflict. So what we're suggesting is not that, like I've gone to the March for Life, I've sat outside abortion clinics with Catholics, right? I understand that Catholics and Protestants can, because I'm Protestant, by the way, can ally on these social and political issues, and that totally
Okay,
100%. Yes. Wait, hold on. But what we're suggesting is history suggests that when those political conflicts have been resolved, and once we put down our pitchforks for that political conflict, those thorny theological issues rear their head again. And then we have the question of whose Christianity and which nationality that I raised at the beginning. So I
Sure.
don't know that y'all have resolved this.
I think it's a slippery slope fallacy. I don't think you have any rigid, reason to believe that it's going to do that. And even if it did, so what? If the will of the people is to change some of the structure of democracy and it's voted on through the current democratic system, then who cares? It was the will of the people.
I'm sorry, hang on. So you guys are suggesting, both of you have said at various times, can you give me a modern example of this sort of, killing people over the faith thing? You've mentioned that, but, you're going back to the Reformation, you're going back to the wars of religion. Give us a modern example, right? We live in modernity, which is a beneficiary
Yeah.
of liberal democracies. And what you all are suggesting, we're suggesting, seems to undercut the foundations of that
Well,
liberal
no,
democracy that has given us this
you
peace
have-
around these religious topics.
But-
Right?
but
It's
you
not,
have-
no, hold on. It's not a slippery slope fallacy to suggest that history teaches that in the absence of these thick protections for the kind of liberties that allow us to exist in a pluralistic society, those things lead to conflict. They just have always, right?
Liberalism, and to piggyback off that just real quick, liberalism was the solution to the wars of Christian nationalist internecine conflicts. Liberalism solved the issue. It asked the fundamental question: even though we have differences, how can we live with each other? How can we live with each other,
Right.
even though we recognize that there are some reasonable differences and sometimes even unreasonable differences, very differences that are almost insurmountable to get past? Liberalism provides and has provided, as you have said, again, the reason Protestants don't generally, the IRA excluded, right? Like, and all that conflict, right? But generally, that they don't do that anymore is because we live in a liberal society. That's what has solved the problem.
okay.
And when you
Wait, the
advocate,
same folks that
we're
said
saying
that
to
the
get
border
rid of
was
that liberal
secure-
society, you are advocating to take away that protection, that shield.
Wait,
that
The
saves-
same folks that say that the border was secure are the same people that are
Yeah.
saying that DC is safe. And at least Christians are more secure in our belief that we're consistent in this matter. We
Exactly.
don't see
Bringing
that
up
anywhere
unrelated
else
things,
across the
brother.
board when it
You're
comes
just-
to
you're just-
laws,
you're just getting
functions,
talking
duties.
points.
One at a
That's
time.
what
I
you're
don't
doing.
see any of this.
Yeah, exactly. Under liberalism, there is no laws or functions or duties, as Marte is saying. That again, under liberalism, any ideology could come in and just kick liberalism to the curb. It's not strong.
I don't see any cohesiveness across the board
There's
on
no
the other end of
standards.
the aisle. I don't see any of that. As far as Christians, we are in alignment and we're consistent on our front. Even Eli has pointed this out numerous times, but you're still dancing around the subject of cohesiveness. That's the topic here. We're going to bring it back to
Yeah.
that.
Wait,
Yeah, and
okay. Oh, go ahead.
And that one, well, just real quick. I mean, I think it is a slippery slope because what you're implying is that if we have what we succeed in and what we are talking about in this debate today in modernity, that it will naturally slip into some kind of archaic theocracy that is going to repeat history. And you have some kind of certainty of this, which you don't. What if I don't want to get away from what we're talking about in modernity today, because that's what you're trying to get us to admit, that our end goal is to have some Trumpian emperor that we're going to crown and we're going to go back into archaic times.
I'm not trying to get you to admit anything. I'm just asking questions, man. I'm just asking questions.
I'm just asking
fair enough.
questions.
That's fair. I'm just wanting to say that that's not where we're having the debate right now. We're talking about the Christian nationalism that we have proposed, number one. Number two, when it comes to Wick's liberalism saved the day and all of the courts of history, when you look at the inner cities and the fatherlessness epidemic in the Black communities, all of the people that are on welfare with broken families.
Hold on.
First of all, do you agree or disagree that strong
Freaking Wick. Yeah, what's so true, James. I was thinking the same thing. Shocker, another Protestant shunning his own holy book in favor of secularism. Yeah, it's always like the Protestants. Like anytime I see a Christian that's like on the lefty side of the aisle, if you will, it's always like the Protestants.
families are the solution to those problems?
Eli,
Agree.
hold on. I got a question for you.
Hey, hold on. It sounds like
How did
Christian
magical
Christianity-
liberalism
Let
get us to
Wick-
this conclusion?
I think
Let
strong
Wick bounce
families
it
are a
back.
great thing, and we should get into strong families. I agree with you. Fair enough, right?
Oh,
The question I have for
interesting.
you: do you think that people were safer back during the Christian nationalist European days of 1800, or do you think people were safer today in modern America?
I think they were safer whenever Christianity was around 90% between the 50s and
No,
60s.
you were wrong. The life expectancy was way down, right? People would be killed all the time over fractious conflicts. Crime is actually, pretty down historically from its high levels. And again, we have never lived in a safer society than we do today.
You're
Never.
negating
Never.
his whole point of families being broken. Matter of fact, when we have the biggest epidemic of single motherhood that's happened, when you look at the outcomes, prisons are filling up. Chicago, look at DC right now. I brought that up, but we skipped over that. By the way, I'll go back to that. And when you look at society,
No,
the
I just asked a question. Hold on, Marte.
that's not safety to me. That's not ensuring the safety of kids. That's not ensuring the safety of two-parent families and households when we're encouraging guy-on-guy relationships and destroying traditions that we have since the dawn of time. I mean, I'm telling you right now that you guys are destabilizing this, which is the lack of cohesiveness cohesiveness. We had state religions. That's been broken down by what? Liberalism, liberal ethicists. Like, this is crazy.
Let me bring up some stats real quick.
Just real quick, Barte. I asked a question directly to address the DC crime issue. I'm asking you, if you were to choose whether you wanted to live in 17th century Germany or you wanted to live in DC, where do you think you would be safer? Where do you think you'd be less likely to be accosted? Where do you think we'd have a higher life expectancy? Which one?
Yeah, obviously we're safer in modernity than the Middle Ages, but you're the one accusing us of taking.
Yeah, but that's but it has to do with the Dark Ages and modernity. Well, that's like saying, like, what does that have to do with Christian ethics versus liberal ethics? Again, Marte brought up like Genghis Khan and Mao. Like, I could be like, okay, well, what would you rather live in? Would you rather live under Genghis Khan, or would you rather live in the Christian state of, whatever is a predominantly Christian state here in the country? Like, that would be like asking that. It's not really a good comparison. Like, obviously, we're gonna want to live in modernity than in the Dark Ages, no matter where it's at. What does that have to do with Christian ethics versus secular ethics?
Yeah, you're the one accusing us of taking us back to the Middle Ages, and you can't demonstrate that. Now, I want to bring up some stats to you. In 1958, when people were asked the question, can you trust, can most people be trusted? What do you think percentage of people said, yes, most people can be trusted? In 1958, it was 55%. And guess what the amount of Christians were? 92%. In 2025, actually, it was 2018. How many people do you think answered the affirmative to, can most people be trusted? 34%. And the amount of Christians down to about 65%. So I know that correlation doesn't always equal causation, but we have clues and we have suggestions to causation that as the Christian ethic goes down, distrust of each other also goes down.
Okay, I have a few
based
things.
Your argument on trust levels and polls.
Well, I think
look.
Hold on.
It's a piece of evidence.
Element of cohesion breaking down. Wick, can you answer that?
If you want to hang your argument on that evidence,
I'm not hanging the whole argument on that, but I think it's an interesting piece of evidence for sure. But I think that when you
compare our arguments and you compare the strength of our the evidence that we've presented, I'm just confident of how this is going. But you, Chris, go ahead.
Well, yeah, of course you're going to be confident in how this is going. But I can tell you as a viewer, it's not going well. And not just because, oh yeah, I agree with them because, I want Christian nationalism. But even the examples you bring up, like you're comparing modernity to the past, you're also bringing up how, if there's Christian nationalism, how the Catholics might go to war with the Orthodox Christians, even though overall Christians agree on the most important things and have the most important values. In my opinion, it's not going well for you guys, but hey, who knows? Maybe they might make a comeback.
Yeah, I would say first to Eli, slippery slopes are only fallacious if the slope is not actually slippery. But I'm not even making an argument about inevitability.
Man, he really should make up like a rhyme for that. Like, slippery slopes don't mean dummies and dopes or something. I don't know, but just something that rhymes. Like, it would have been perfect if he would have said that. I would have been like, okay, maybe they could win the argument if you would have just said something clever.
Talking about are probabilistic outcomes in the future for policies that we're pushing for now. And so we're all dealing with future possibilities. And so we're dealing in the realm of probability. So I'm not even making an argument of inevitability here. I'm saying we can take historical data and bring it into now and suggest that if we strip down some of the constitutional heritage that, by the way, I think is an inheritance that we obtain from Christendom, that has restricted the power of the magistrate, that has protected some things that we care about, then we increase the likelihood of some of these conflicts recurring. Second, hold on. When you guys bring up examples of establishmentarianism as a positive example, like the states in from colonization past the ratification of the Constitution, you guys are the ones introducing the issue of which church gets public support and what are the consequences of that. Let me give you one example, right? If you went back to the colonization period to the briefly after ratification period, where states sometimes had requirements that you be a Christian to hold public office. That did happen in colonial America. I agree. I concede 100%. I'm not denying history. The question is, which people count as Christians? And that leads to some of these thorny theological conflicts we're dealing with. Do you have to be a member of an apostolic church? Do you have to be a member of what Protestants might call a confessional church? Can you be a Quaker?
Right.
All of these things are relevant.
In order
right?
to
So
do
when you-
what?
Well, it's actually irrelevant because we're talking about ethics. No one's suggesting, oh, once we become a Christian nation, everyone must convert to Christianity. Pick a denomination, and there you go. Like, no one's saying that. We're saying we want a country ruled by Christian ethics.
Hold on. When you guys are introducing that as a policy and a possibility and a thing you're praising, you've brought that up. Finally, Marte keeps bringing up fully irrelevant things that I think both of us are kind of willing to concede. Man, it sucks that there's crap on the streets in San Francisco, and I don't want to pull out the San Francisco poop tracker. Neither of us are defending that. So you keep bringing up stuff that's fully irrelevant to the arguments we're making against your positive.
Not irrelevant.
Yeah, well, no, he's not even saying that you guys are defending it. He's saying that under liberalism, that's what it has led to. That's why he's bringing it up.
And you're impugning secularism to us.
Lack of cohesion. That's crazy.
Well,
Neither of us are saying that there's cohesion right now.
When I'm bringing that up,
well,
I'm
then the
bringing
debate
up
lost.
examples and demonstrations of what's happening as a result of lack of cohesion on your end. We're not seeing this. So whenever you have a Protestant and an Eastern Orthodox disagree, I don't care. When you have a Protestant and the Eastern Orthodox disagree, they both believe on the tenets of Christendom. When you think about this, even when they're disagreeing, they're underneath the same umbrella. When we talk about this, they're not killing each other. But if you look at liberalism, they're killing each other, and then they're sending each other to prison, and they're doing all this. There's actually more of a divide on that side when you take away Christian ethics or anything else. All of this is backed by force. Because if I'm going to ask you a question right now, Eucharist. So if you have marriage and we say gays can't get married underneath our religion in the state, who would get hurt from this?
Do you want me to answer questions?
All right, let's see what he has to say.
About particular policy issues, or are you talking about the broader ideology? Because I can tell you why I think Obergefell is a bad decision. I can tell you what, I
Hold on, real quick. This person right here, with the super chat or the membership or whatever, religion doesn't follow freedom, or religion doesn't allow freedom. Freedom allows religion. No, not true. I mean, yes, freedom does allow religion, but religion, it's not just like, it's true. Religion doesn't just allow freedom. Like, it is true, but liberalism doesn't really allow freedom either. All it does is it's a worldview that's just not cohesive, and it's not consistent, and it doesn't stand the test of time because the group's preferences are changing day after day. So on one hand, the morality of today is, oh, this is wrong to do. In a month, 2 months, a year, whatever, it might not be seen wrong to do. That's the thing with liberalism. However, you're still not free under liberalism. Okay? There are still social mores that you're not allowed to do under liberalism. And if you violate these social mores, you get in trouble for it, or you get shamed for it, what have you. So for instance, if you say certain words, if I say retarded, the R slur, if you will, if I say that, well, under liberalism, that's not right. That's wrong. That's insulting and offensive to people. Therefore, you're not allowed to say that. Like, you're technically allowed to say that. However, you're going to suffer the consequences, like the left like to tell us these last few years whenever we said something bad or naughty. So no, you're not even free under liberalism. You just have to follow a different set of ethics. The problem with liberalism is that those ethics change over time. It's not consistent or cohesive.
I agree with you guys on a bunch of policy. That's why this debate is kind of weird, actually. I didn't mention this in my opening for time, but I agree with a lot of policies that Christians support. But again, this is not Christian nationalism by necessity. The definition you guys have given me is one, so overbroad that it's useless. But we had words for this before you guys started being Christian nationalists on the internet and trying to defend this weird ideology, right? We had words for Christian conservatism and the moral majority. We can form political coalitions to fight against abortion. That's all liberal democracy with moral Christian coalitions.
Liberalism, baby.
Our definition is an absolute, Eucharist.
First of all,
Sorry,
I don't
what?
think that it's. Go ahead, Marte.
I didn't hear that. Sorry.
Go ahead, Eli. I was just asking if you know definitions are an absolute.
I'm not saying they're an absolute. I'm just saying there are connotations to this term or concept, Christian nationalism, and the definition you've given me is completely unhelpful. So there's a whole cultural conversation happening around this right now. Again, I think I've been very careful. I'm not saying you guys believe what everybody else who's defending on the internet believes. I'm just saying, like, one, you guys. Well, by the way, we haven't even talked about nationalism. What's a nation? How do I know when I found one? How do I know when it's Christian or not? But that aside, like. There's a whole cultural movement right now. You guys are choosing to latch onto this term rather than just saying, well, I want Christian values and policy, right? That's a thing that people have been doing for freaking ever. Okay, some of the oldest policy lobbying organizations in DC are pro-life organizations who've been like, we are fundamentally Christians. We think this is bad and wrong, and we're going to fight against it with all of our dollars and all of our every fiber of our being. We're going to open crisis pregnancy centers. I don't think that's Christian nationalism. That's my point.
Sure. Well, it's not Christian nationalism because these things are being fought against a dominance in social and political life that is antithetical to Christian ethics, which is why we are positing that we should have the dominance. That is what I think is the key word when it comes to the Christian nationalist debate, is that it's so dominant that anybody associates America with a Christian ethic. Whenever they say, hey, do we want to take a trip to America, and it's a bunch of new age atheist fedora tipping losers, they go, no, we probably shouldn't go there. It's overwhelmingly run and socially and culturally functions under a Christian paradigm. We probably wouldn't have a lot of fun there. That would mean to me that we have succeeded in Christian nationalism and that the paradigm is lifted. Of course, people have enacted Christian policies. We're not saying that, well, we don't get to have Christian policies, so until we do, we have Christian nationalism. It's an overwhelming dominance that we are purporting here. And that's step one to what you were
acknowledge that can exist in a liberal structure, that you can
yeah,
have
I'm saying exactly. Christian nationalism can be applied to any structure.
No,
under
Christian nationalism and liberalism are at odds. I would
What? Yeah, they are at odds. He is right. But you know, liberalism though can't fight off Christian ethics because even as Wick just said, liberalism, Christian ethics can be can exist in a liberal society. So yeah, good job, Wick. You fall into a worldview that could absolutely be dominated by any kind of other ideology. That's probably why there's certain other countries out there that are importing, you know, a bunch of foreigners, and a lot of them happen to be Muslim, and the Islamic religion seems to be taking over certain parts of the country. That's because of liberalism, huh? Because of liberalism. Yeah, I don't see that there's any hope for Wick TV or Eucharist, but you know what? Hey, props on them for trying. Good on Eli Nix and Marte Raylis as always. You know, Marte cooked as always. Eli, I'm new to Eli, but he did a good job. He's absolutely correct about the fedora wearing atheist. Also, a lot of them are bald too. So again, angry at God because they're bald. If God real, why am I bald? So they have to wear the fedoras. But what did you guys think about this debate? Leave a comment in the comment section below. Give this video a like if you liked it. That'll be helping me out a lot. And it'll really help me out a lot if you subscribe to my channel, if you enjoy debates like this. I got a whole bunch of them on my channel. Also, if you want to see the full debate, it is on the Raging Tomatoes channel. I'll have a link down below for that. Also, subscribe to her channel. She's doing great work over there. And also make sure to watch the Cool Stream live Mondays through Fridays at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time.